Day 5, a star to light the way. Numbers 24, verse 17. This is an interesting prophecy coming from a very unusual source. A sorcerer, Balaam. This man had on several occasions been employed by Balak to curse the people of Israel, his purpose being to help him destroy them. Yet on every occasion, Balaam was forced by God to pronounce a blessing on them. Remember, Balaam intended to go meet Balak. In fact, he wanted to go. Such a request by a king represented the possibility of great reward if his curse worked. But God blocked him and forced him to speak words that prevented any possibility of such a reward. Finally, after several attempts, Balaam no longer performed his rituals. He simply spoke, or rather, God spoke. It may have been a terrifying but exhilarating moment to be used by God to speak, to proclaim words that represented God's plan, words that spoke of the rise of a star, the coming of the one carrying the scepter of Israel, words that represented victory for God's people and destruction of the enemies of Israel. What is even more interesting is the double layer to his words. They represented two time frames and the fulfilling of God's plan using two symbols, the star and the scepter. Both represented symbols of royalty and the nature of that royalty. The first was the star coming out of Jacob, and the second was the scepter rising out of Israel. Balaam's prophecy in Numbers 24 contains three parts. Let's look at them in reverse order. The third clearly implies complete destruction of the enemy. It is an action that will end the capacity to act, for the head is the center of decision. It also means the prevention of the future possibility of action. When the head is destroyed, the body dies and can no longer carry out the desires of the head. This refers to the current enemies of Israel. The verses that follow provide a list of them and their fate. But behind this is another enemy that will be destroyed, and that is where we need to look at the other 2 points. The second part is about the scepter rising that will carry out the first of the actions of punishment. Historically, this was carried out by David, who defeated all of the enemies listed in this oracle, fulfilling the word and vision given to Balak. It was David who brought an end to Moab, Edom, Seir, and many others. They were either destroyed, made powerless, or subjugated. Before we look at the first part, let's consider the two concepts being used. The scepter, which represents the power and authority of the king, and the star, which represents imperial greatness and splendor. Both of these are evident in David. He was chosen by God and given the power and authority to rule over the nation of Israel. His reign was great and filled with splendor, but in a limited way. Its true greatness and splendor would not be seen in its fullness until the reign of his son Solomon. David's exercise of the power and authority given to him laid the foundation for the greatness and splendor that was Solomon. But it is the first part that takes us beyond the more immediate fulfilling of the words of Balaam, to a more complete fulfillment of this oracle. While the symbols are descriptive of the time, it would not be until the birth of Jesus that a star would in fact arise to be seen, the Star of Bethlehem. No star marked the birth of David. No star marked his ascension to the throne. In fact, his rise was tumultuous and difficult, and it would not actually destroy the sons of confusion, as translated by Kylan Dillich in the Darby Bible. Destroying a particular people, army, or nation will only limit their activity. The star rises at Jesus' birth. The Magi correctly interpreted this and went in search of the King of the Jews. Jesus was born of the line of David, and so had the right to hold the scepter and wield its power and authority. Jesus reflects this truth in his declaration that it was his, Matthew 28:18. But the splendor and majesty were also his. The Magi connected the two and revealed this in the nature of the gifts they brought, the gifts of splendor and greatness that are due a king. It is Jesus who brings an end to the sons of confusion, Satan and his realm and death, the two things that man fears most and have been his enemies since that fateful day in the garden. This star lights the way to Christmas. It lights the way for us to see how God has been working. The star will light the way, and the people will see a great light.